Thank you for joining us on behalf of the Bryant Alumni Association to our Summer Welcome podcast series. The purpose of this podcast is to welcome the class of 2020 to our alumni family and give them the best tips and tricks for living and working in various cities across the country. My name is Jessica Dang, and I will be your moderator for this session. Today, we are going to discuss the West Coast region. I would like to thank all of our panelists for joining us. We know the experiences of our alumni that are here are very valuable to share with the Bryant community. Every opportunity for alumni to exchange ideas strengthens and expands our Bryant network. Today, we are joined by Vicente Vinpina from class of 88 from Portland, Islindy Marius from class of 13 from San Jose, Joe Winooski from class of 2016 from Los Angeles, and Lori Koski, class of 86 from San Diego. Now, the purpose of this session is to give the class of 2020 a warm welcome to the Bryant alumni family, and while we can't do this in person this year, we are excited to have a few of our established alumni from all over the West Coast to help us celebrate. So during today's panel session, I will be asking our panelists a series of questions that will hopefully provide some insight as to how they got to where they are today after graduating Bryant. They will also share with us some tips about working and living in the West Coast region, specifically to the area they are in. Let's get started with some introductions. Please tell us your name, class year, where you currently reside, where you're from, in your professional role, and just a short congratulatory message to the class of 2020. So for this, I'm going to have Vin go first.
Hello, class of 2020. My name is Vicente Pina, and I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm originally from Connecticut. My major was marketing. I received my BS in business administration. I also hold an MBA, and I moved out to Portland, Oregon about 8 years ago, and I work in the financial services industry, and I work remotely. And one of the best parts about working here in Portland, Oregon is that as you know, we've got great weather and it's a nice part of the country. The career path I went into has a lot to do with marketing and finance. I've always had an interest in that. As soon as I graduated, about a year later, I got into financial services and I've been in it ever since. Luckily, I joined Prudential in 1989 and I left, but I did come back and I've been with the company ever since. Bryant is a great place to go to school, and I go back very often, and I believe that the incoming class of 2020 is in a great position to do great things, and congratulations.
Welcome, class of 2020. Welcome to the Bryant alumni family. My name is Lori Koski. I graduated in 1986. I'm from Rhode Island originally, but I moved out to San Diego 30 years ago, kind of the long way. I started working, my degrees in computer information systems and minor in accounting, and started working with the lottery systems. It was early days and was traveling all over the country, ended up in California, starting the California lottery. And then I got into the payment industry by accident, actually. And I've been in the payment industry for years, doing all sorts of things, running implementation, account management. Right now, I'm working for one of the largest credit union payment networks in the world, a co-op network. And I manage a portfolio of credit unions on the West Coast.
Hello, everyone. My name is Islindy Marius. I'm originally from Providence, Rhode Island. I attended Bryant University and graduated in 2013. While I was there, my major was sociology service learning, and I double minored actually in business administration as well as legal studies. From there, I went on to Roger Williams University School of Law to obtain my law degree, and now I currently live and work in Silicon Valley for Fragaman, global immigration law firm, where we do business immigration for the tech companies here. And I love it. I love my time at Bryant, and I'm sure that any student who chooses Bryant or attends it is going to love their time there as well. And I do feel like they set me up not only for the career that I'm in now, but also definitely set me up for life.
My name is Joe Wisniewski. I graduated in 2016 from Bryant, and at the time, was really interested in finance. For the specific role that I was looking for, Bryant wasn't necessarily a school that a lot of the firms were looking to do on-campus recruiting for at the time. So one of the things that was very helpful for me to get into the investment banking industry was the networking that I was able to do with Bryant alumni throughout Boston and New York, and spending a lot of time just meeting with people that have gotten into the industry from different perspectives or different angles, how they went about it, and how I was able to do kind of a similar process in order to enter the industry. I had a great time at Bryant, but I also feel like it set me up for a really great career path. And once I graduated, I started with a firm in Boston where I worked for a couple of years, and then had the opportunity to move out west. And I really never contemplated that before, but made the decision to go ahead and move to Los Angeles, where I've been for almost 3 years now, and I've really enjoyed it, every minute of it. So, I think for the class of 2020, I would say congratulations, and just, enjoy every minute of the first few years after graduating, because it goes by very quickly. And before you know it, it's almost, I'm coming up on my 5-year reunion. So it's pretty incredible how fast it goes once you graduate.
Thank you all for such a great introduction. And also thank you for some of the congratulatory messages that you sent for the 2020 class. I'd actually like to take this moment to toast to the class of 2020. So despite the unique challenges we're facing in the world today, you all worked hard to complete your Bryant experience, and we all hope you will be recognized for all your accomplishments very soon. So congratulations on finishing your 4 years at Bryant, and welcome to the Bryant alumni family. So just cheers.
Cheers.
So we'll start with the first question, and why don't this time we start with Lori for the first question. What is your story? Like, what did you do after graduation, and where did you basically get to where you are in the career path that you were on after Bryant?
It was by accident, actually. Like I said, I started off with the lottery, with California Lottery, ended up in California. Then I didn't want to do that anymore, and found a job at a software place for credit unions. And believe it or not, I'm totally dating myself here, but the ATM world and debit cards were just starting up, and I was at the right place at the right time. And I got in on the ground floor and became a debit card expert from the start, and just my career went off from there. So that's my story.
That's pretty awesome, though. Well, Islindy, would you like to go next? Again, what is your story, and what did you do after graduation? How did you get to where you are in the career path you are on now after Bryant?
Sure. So after graduation, I actually became a substitute teacher in Providence because I wasn't yet sure if I wanted to go on to law school immediately. And I also was looking for ways that I could give back to the community in Providence, since that's where I had grown up. So I substitute taught for a while, and I realized, I did not like that. And I did not want to be a teacher. Really big job, definitely not for me. So from there, I went on to Roger Williams and obtained my law degree. After Roger Williams, I, set about looking for a great fit in terms of a good law firm. Although Fragman was my dream law firm even back then, it was a really tough process trying to get into the firm. I had applied to so many of their different offices, including Boston, New York, where they're headquartered, and DC, and I was not successful. I'll be the first to admit, it was very hurtful. I'm like, why don't they love me? But then I happened to just throw my name in the hat for this role in Santa Clara. Before then, I had never even been to California. I just so badly wanted to be a part of the work that this firm was doing. And next thing you know, I got a call back and went through the series of virtual interviews. So I guess they're preparing me for 2020, huh?
Yeah.
And from there, I accepted the role, and I started working before I ever even moved to California. And it's been just a great journey ever since. There's no place that I'd rather be.
Well, that's awesome. I'm happy that you were able to, get the position that you wanted, and then do the whole virtual interview that everyone's doing now in this day and age, and then and then, end up loving the place that you went. So that's
Absolutely. Great fit.
cool. All right, Joe, you're up next. So again, what is your story? What did you do after graduation, and how did you get to where you are on the career path you are on now after Bryant?
So when I was at Bryant, probably freshman through junior year, I definitely had an interest on the asset management side of finance, where you're investing money into the businesses, and whether they're public or private. And thought that's what I wanted to do. And it took me until the end of my junior year internship in asset management that made me realize that I wasn't as interested in that and wanted to be more on the advisory side and the investment banking world. So the problem with that was that typically the career track for that is you do an internship in the space your sophomore year at a smaller firm, then you go work for a big New York bank your junior year, and then you get a full-time offer back for your senior year. And they don't really recruit people their senior year to join from graduation. So I knew I had a big hurdle that I needed to step over in order to get into the industry. So for the fall semester, the end of the summer going into my senior year, I just started cold calling every bank I could find in New York and Boston. And it got to the point where I was basically like, I need experience. I want to work. I'll come in for free a couple days a week and just prove that I prove my worth before you start paying me. So luckily I got a bank to take me up on that offer in Boston, and I did that for 6 months. Then they said, we'd like you to come back and we'll pay you as an intern. And then at the time they said there's no full-time offer available when you graduate because we're not hiring any full-time people this year, or at least at this stage. And I said, well, I'm not leaving. I'm going to stay, because I had no other opportunities in this field that I had gotten offers at the time. And I was constantly going to New York and networking. And I basically said, I'm not leaving. And then finally they said, all right, we'll give you an offer. So I started there when I graduated. About a year or so after that, I don't really know exactly why, but our Los Angeles office was growing, and I found an opportunity to move to LA to continue building that office. And then after a couple of years there, had an opportunity to join a much larger firm that's also based out of LA and has a parent in Tokyo. So it's really been kind of a step-by-step progression, but I think the mentality at Bryant kind of set me up for that path.
Well, that's awesome, Jill. Definitely great example of just hard work and dedication and persistency that has gotten you to where you are, which is awesome. So thank you for sharing. And Vin, you're up next. So again, what is your story? What did you do after graduation? And how did you get to where you are now in the career path that you were on after Bryant?
Well, while I was at Bryant, I had a great deal of interest in business, obviously, because at that time that was the predominant major and or degree. And I focused in on marketing. I had an interest in finance as well, but I really got into the marketing aspect. I had an internship at Pitney Bowes in Waltham, Massachusetts, and that was a great experience. And then once I graduated, I spent a year in retail in a management program in Seekonk, Massachusetts. And then eventually I got recruited into the financial services industry by another Bryant grad. And basically that kind of was the story of how my career would unfold. I stayed in financial services ever since, and I worked around the world. I worked in Asia in the 90s. I worked in Latin America into the early 2000s. And I've pretty much been domestic probably for the last 10 years or so. And so I would say when I look back on my career path, I would say three things really stood out. One is definitely having that internship, having, experience while I'm in college, because, working in the real world, unless you have an internship, it's a little harder to kind of gauge how your life is going to be, right? And number two, did a lot of interviews. At that time, Bryant, the career placement office was very active. And so I had a lot of interviews. and that really helped me, become a much better interviewer. And then lastly, I did a lot of networking. The Bryant network is strong, and I got myself involved in the Hartford, Connecticut alumni chapter, and there were about 6 of us, and really that really opened up the contacts that I had. And so to this day, that group of alumni, I'm still very good friends with, and we're in touch. So living on the West Coast, there's alumni folks out here, and we've actually had a few alumni events out here, which has actually been really great. So when I look back, I would just say that I'm certainly getting active, getting out of my comfort zone, being open to opportunities, and investing in yourself. Those are the keys to my career path.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think you touched upon something that we'll go over a little bit later about how did you use your Bryant network to get to where you are today. And I think you speak on, it's very important to utilize your Bryant network because our Bryant network is so strong. But yeah, it does seem like you also traveled a lot, and you said you've been domestic for about 10 years. Do you ever miss traveling?
Well, up until recently, I was traveling about 30% of the time. Not so much internationally, but yeah, I do enjoy traveling. And for those of us who grew up on the East Coast, the West Coast traveling can be just as fun, if not more fun. So where I'm based in Portland, I can be in Seattle in about a 25-minute flight. I can be down to San Francisco in less than an hour, and can be down to San Diego in a couple of hours. And I've done that. I've gone down to California just for the day and worked either in San Jose or in LA or in San Diego, and then come back in the evening. Or there's a lot of other places like Las Vegas and Arizona, Phoenix in particular, that are just an easy hop, skip, and a jump away. So for those folks who haven't been to the West Coast, or new graduates who are looking at it, they really should consider it, because it's a beautiful place to live. At least where I am located, the real estate prices are very reasonable. There's no state sales tax. Income taxes are low compared to the East Coast. And there's direct flights back home. So I can fly from Boston to Boston from Portland on a direct flight and get there in 5 or 6 hours. So I feel like I'm not that far away from home.
Yeah, definitely. You make it seem super easy to travel, to get up and just go. But definitely. Well, thank you for sharing that, guys. So it just seems like we all kind of originate from the East Coast area, either being in Providence or in Massachusetts. And it seems like, most of you guys are relocated to the West Coast. Now, what, in terms of this question, what do you guys like most about working and living, in the areas that you are in? Especially since you guys chose to relocate there for either, to chase your opportunities in your job goals. So I guess I'll have Lori go first this time.
Let's see. That's a hard question. I work from home too, and I worked from home for the last 10 years, and I've traveled for 30 years. So I've been all over the place, just like Vin. So when COVID happened, it didn't change much. And it's harder when you work from home to meet people. I mean, I actually met my husband at my first job here in San Diego. We worked together, so that's why I stayed. I live in San Diego, so it's not cheap. It's very, very expensive to live here. But you can't beat the weather. That's like the best part about it. Honestly, it's the weather. That's why I stay here. Taxes are not cheap. Housing is not cheap. San Diego is not as easy to get to places because there's not a lot of direct flights. To go back home, I always have to stop somewhere. So it is a little different than like LA or San Francisco or Portland or Seattle. But it's the weather. We stay here for the weather. That's the number one reason.
Well, that is really good to know, especially for our newly graduates. If they're planning to go to San Diego, it might not be super feasible to do so because it is a little
hard.
bit.
It is hard. Yeah. It is hard, very hard for new grads to come here. Housing's a challenge. There is not a lot of housing here, even to, definitely not to buy, and to rent is even worse. So it's a challenge.
Gotcha. Well, thank you, Lori, for your insight on that in San Diego. Lindy, would you like to share, what you like to do, what you like most about working and living in San Jose?
Well, I'll say this, although I do agree with Lori with regards to how expensive it is here. I mean, yeah, rent costs an arm and a leg. If you think you're going to purchase, forget it. And it's not that you can't purchase, right? It's just that you're looking at the value of the property and you're thinking like, okay, in Rhode Island or wherever I can get so much more bang for my buck. However, on the flip side, because of how expensive it is to live here, your salary is higher than it would have been if you stayed on the East Coast. So I think it's worth the jump, right? I think it's worth it to come out here to California because coming out here can change the trajectory of the rest of your career in terms of not only your experience, right? You get a unique experience here, especially if you're looking at the legal aspect. California laws are different from many of the other laws in the other jurisdictions in the country, and you're getting a higher salary. So now if you decide that you want to move back to the East Coast or to the Midwest, wherever else, your salary has significantly been increased. And so now you can take that West Coast salary and really go crazy anywhere else in the country. Also, piggybacking off of what Vin said, you know, and the fact that thus far I see a trend where Lori's been remote for a while, Vin said he's been remote for a while, I was remote before I moved, and then I briefly was in the office before COVID. West Coasters also tend to have more of a relaxed lifestyle. Like you can work remote, even if it's just 2-3 days out of the week, you have that option more than you would see it in other corporate areas. You know, there's just a better quality of life here, I think, overall.
Mm-hmm.
With the weather, with the sunshine, with just the way that people are, it's much better than that uptight hustle and bustle that you find on the East Coast. So I personally would highly recommend it. And I think that Bryant grads are specially equipped to be able to handle, you know, the competition that's involved with landing a role here and being able to keep up in the job market in an area like Silicon Valley or San Francisco or just the West Coast in general. So I would say take the jump, take the leap of faith. Like I said, I had never even been to California before I applied to the role, still hadn't been to California before I started working here. And I visited one time before I officially made the move. And I only came to visit because I came to look at apartments.
Well, those are definitely some great tips and advice just to make that leap. I mean, I've only been to the West Coast maybe once, and it was to LA just to visit some family. But other than that, I didn't really get to see the rent market or, you know, the salary that you would get in the West Coast and in the culture of just being super relaxed in terms of that lifestyle that can bring a lot of benefits to us. So thank you for that, Islindy. So since we're on the topic of, California, why don't Joe go next to talk about Los Angeles?
Sure. So I think Lori pretty much nailed it in terms of the weather is probably the biggest reason why at least Southern California is the place to be. But there are a lot of difficulties that you kind of have to deal with. There's a lot of traffic. If you want to go from LA to San Diego on a Friday, just forget about it. Yeah, it's normally a 2-hour drive, but you know, if you do it, then it's 7 or 8 hours. But I think that Lindy was right in that like the day-to-day feel of living in LA, or I would imagine San Diego or some other markets on the West Coast, it feels more laid back. Obviously the sun's always out, so you never have to check the weather when you make plans, which I used to, you know, every day walk into the office in Boston, I had to look up whether it was going to rain and whether I needed to bring my umbrella, or I'd get caught in it on halfway through on the walk there. But I do think it's a healthier kind of lifestyle. So a lot of the restaurants you see are offering healthier food products, and more so at my last firm, but because it was an East Coast firm, the hours were kind of based on East Coast. So I'd be in the office super early, but then a lot of times I could leave when the sun's still out, which is kind of nice, and you can go hiking or do whatever and enjoy the outdoors. And I think that kind of translates across kind of industries where, although you know we're 3 hours behind, I think a lot of the world still kind of goes off East Coast time for some things. So you know, you're busier in the morning, I found, but things kind of lighten up in the evening. And then lastly, I would say another interesting angle of Los Angeles and Southern California is that the industry opportunities here are different than they would be on the East Coast. So an area like finance, there's less opportunities here. There's some big banks and there's some unique opportunities, but there's not nearly the volume of jobs as in New York or in Boston. But then we have the entertainment industry where we have all the big agencies, all the studios, where if that's something you're interested in, that's an area. There's music and other areas as well. So it's just a different landscape of job opportunities, and as Lindy said, it's an opportunity for you to really skyrocket or accelerate the pace of your career, because this is where, if you're in those specific industries, where things are happening.
Well, thank you, Joe, for your insight. Well, I guess there's a huge common theme of, what do you like most about working and living in the West Coast, and it's definitely the weather. I know, I remember Joe always, he'll sometimes when he first went to LA, he'll message me and say, it's raining today. It's crazy. It never rains in LA. And that has always brought a smile to my face, because I thought that was funny, because the weather in New England is so unpredictable. So,
you know what, just to burst the weather bubble though, Northern California gets cold.
Okay. All right. So
don't
go to
Northern California doesn't get warm.
No, it gets warm.
I was there July 4th last year, and it was freezing.
You were probably in San Francisco. It gets warm.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But our winter is basically a New England fall. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a New England fall here in winter, and people will wear parkas, and I'm like, calm down, it's not that cold. But for them, they're freezing. And San Francisco, even though it's only 45 minutes away, is even colder. So I will be wearing a sundress because it's 90 degrees here in San Jose, and then I'll drive up to San Francisco and immediately need a jacket. So that's just, but the weather is still, you don't have to shovel snow. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it gets wimpier as I've been here 30 something years, and when I was younger it was this is great shorts, t-shirts. Now anything over 70, I have heavy sweater and boots on, so you get really wimpy as the time goes by and you forget about it.
No, absolutely. I have a good friend here who's from California, and he's still not used to it. I mean, he went to Bryant for 4 years. He's still not used to it. So
I'm from Rhode Island, and I never got used to it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for that. So we're going to move on to our next question, which is meeting people in your company and in the same cities. So what are some suggestions do you have for meeting new people in your company versus your new area? And I know, Laura, you touched upon this before, where, working remote might be a little hard to meet people. Yeah. So do you have some suggestions? And we can start with you since I have you on.
It was different when I was younger, right? We didn't work remotely when I was younger. That just wasn't obviously an option. But when I moved out here, I was in my 20s, and we worked software company. I was there for 10 years. Those people still are my family. Like I said, that's where I met my husband, and they're still all our friends. So we traveled together, we worked together. It was fun.
So you'd say maybe meeting people in your company might be easier than meeting outside people from your city?
For me, from my experience, it's totally different now. And
awesome. Okay. Why don't we go with Lindy, since you're next on my screen? Same question, meeting people in the company and city, what do you find easiest, and what are some suggestions and tips you have for, new alumni who are moving to the West Coast looking to meet new people?
So first things first, you want to tap into your LinkedIn network, right? Just tap into your network first, your soft network, and figure out, do you know anybody who lives where you're going, right? And that's always your first go-to. Hey, so-and-so, I'm moving to your area. Can we get together, even if it's just lunch, whatever the case may be, because you want to have someone there. When I was moving here, I had nobody. I knew no one here. So my first few friends that I made at work, people who I just found that I clicked with really well at work on my team, and those became my first set of girlfriends. Also, we're living in a digital age, right? So there are so many platforms out there that are specifically put together to facilitate people meeting up. The next place where I had found my set of friends was on Meetup. There was a Meetup group for people who were new to the South Bay area. And they had happy hours every like first Friday of the month and things of that nature. So I went to one event and I just clicked really well with some of the people there. And, you know, from there, I've basically been able to bridge those two groups of friends, the ones that I've made at work and the ones that I met on the meetup team, and created my own little like group here. And so use those platforms, you know, use the different websites that are out there for meeting new people, and try to get to know the people that you work with. I know that some people are weird about that. They don't really want to be friends with colleagues. I'm not saying to be friends with all of them, but you know, you do want to find the one or two people who you really vibe with well at work and take it from there. They'll introduce you to their friends and other friends, and you guys can meet friends and be friends. And that's how I did it. That's what worked for me. I'm also very outgoing. So I know that might be a little more difficult for somebody who's shy. If you're shy and maybe not as much of an extrovert, then I would highly suggest like, you know, trying to use those platforms that are specifically put together to get people together. You know, I noticed that I'm on my local meetup site. They have a group of people that go hiking, a group of people that like are a group of people that do all kinds of things. So do something, join a group that has an interest that of something that you also are interested in, and take it from there.
Gotcha. No, those are really great advice, especially using your LinkedIn network, because not everyone thinks about that first. You know, they think like LinkedIn is more professional versus, you know, more of a personal type of engagement. But awesome, thank you. Now, Vin, you are on my right side next to us, Lindy, so why don't you go next? Same question to you. What are some suggestions do you have for meeting new people, either in your company or in your area, or when you're traveling?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And because I'm not a native for the West Coast, you know, it's really important to network and to meet those relationships, right? If I was still on the East Coast, I'd still have, you know, your natural group of friends and family. So out here, several things. One was, as Lindy mentioned, the meetup. I've been involved with meetup now for over 10 years. I had a meetup group in New York City, a wine group that I started, and I also started one in Boston, and now I'm in Portland. And there's about 500 people in the group. And it's mostly a lot of people who are new to Portland, and they're into wine and food. And so, you know, who wouldn't want to join a group like that, right?
I want to join.
Yes, yes. And I've had people come to town who are either Bryant alums or friends, just in for the weekend, or maybe they're going to a wedding, or maybe they're just in town as a tourist, and they'll go to a meetup event. And so that's one. Find a meetup group or some type of a group that is in link with your interest. Two, definitely the LinkedIn aspect of networking. We've had some events out here with other Bryant grads. Out here, the biggest industries are probably, footwear and outdoor wear. So Nike's world headquarters is here. So there's a number of Bryant grads who work at Nike. Also, Adidas's U.S. headquarters is here in Portland. So there's a number of people from New England who went to Bryant who now work at Adidas here in Portland. Intel is the second largest employer in Oregon, and there's a number of Bryant folks, you know, especially in the IT field. So I would definitely suggest that. And then the third thing is one of the things that's really nice about living on the West Coast is that, you know, there is this work-life balance. So when 5 o'clock comes, people have stuff to do. When I lived in New York and 5 o'clock came, people are still working until 6 and 7. And you know what I mean? By the time they get home on the train or on the T or on the subway, it's nighttime. Here, I can remember working, and it was a Friday, and it was 5 o'clock, and I'm at my desk, and I look around, and there's nobody else there. That wouldn't have happened, you know, when I lived on the East Coast. So there's this, because of that work-life balance, it means that even someone who's an introvert can say, gee, you know, I can go do something. I can go maybe to the beach, or go play golf, or go skiing, or go on a bike ride or a hike right after work, and not have to worry about having all of that work responsibility. So I find there's definitely more of a work-life balance out here. And so that's really worked for me, because I didn't know anyone out here, but now I have a really nice, tight group of friends mostly either through LinkedIn, through the meetup groups, and of course through people that I work with. And I found Bryant people at Prudential, and so we kind of talk amongst each other. And then I also have people from previous employers that work at Prudential. I used to work at a company called AXA, a French company. And just today we got a group of us together and we did a little chat about, how we're doing, through the pandemic, working from home. So there are ways to kind of get your network together, even when you don't know anybody and you're brand new to a city.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I did find a common theme that you guys talked, especially, as Lindy talked about Meetup. Is that a software that you guys use, like an app, or is that just known as, like a
website? I think there is an app to it as well. I personally don't use the app, but it is a website. It's been around for years now because I first learned of it, I think in 2014, 2015, when I had kind of recently graduated from Bryant University. And I didn't really use it back when I was on the East Coast because I had friends. I didn't need to meet up with anybody, but I was a part of like one meetup group. I don't recall what the nature of it was, but as Vin noted, there are so many different kinds of groups on there. So just go on meetup.com and, type in your area and it'll show you all of the meetups that are in your area, and you can join multiple. You can join one or two. You can even start one if you find that there isn't one that has the things that you like. Just start a meetup group. Be the one to start something. I decided which Vin, I'm gonna need you for this. I decided that I was gonna start a book club called the Thirsty Scholars, and we were gonna focus on literature and libations. And so I'm in the process of like ramping that up and trying to partner with different alcohols or just get that going. And when I put that out there, I'm like, anybody want to be a part of a book club that drinks wine? So many people were like blowing me up. I'm like, I'm not ready. I'm sorry I even put it out there yet, but people want to get together. So you can either be the one to facilitate them getting together, or you can find someone else who wants to make that bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a cool website. I'm surprised I've never heard of it. And, I hope some of our listeners who are going to watch this video to join your club or to go on to Meetup or utilize that website. But Joe, have you heard of Meetup? Have you used it since you recently moved to Los Angeles? What are some of your ways and some suggestions that, you use to meet people in the office and out of the office?
Yeah, well, I've definitely heard of Meetup. And I have the app on my phone, and I've subscribed to a bunch of different groups. And so I think what was a little bit different for me was when I moved here, for better or worse, I had a small group of Bryant alumni that I was friends with, and then a number of people that I studied abroad with live in Southern California, and not necessarily right in the immediate kind of LA area, but a number of people that I could see on weekends and things like that. So I think probably, unfortunately, honestly, I was never pushed to go to the meetup events, but I've always looked at them and have wanted to kind of go and check them out because it seems like a great way to meet people. So I kind of had an initial group of people that I knew in the area, and then through them met others. And then I'd say the other primary channel of how I met people when I moved here was through work. And where it was a similar kind of age group of individuals in my office, so we all kind of clicked. And then since I've joined another firm, there's another 60 or so people there that I've met, and about 20 of them are early mid-20s. So for me, it's been a great way to meet people is through work, because we're spending most of my time there anyways. So you inevitably kind of become friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Joe. Yeah, I think, it really depends on, a few of you said that, if you're an introvert or an extrovert, there are always ways to, to meet people around your area, whether it be online or during your free time, since there's a lot of free time in the West Coast after work to explore and do something that, you don't typically do in the East Coast. So we're going to move on to our last question, actually. I'd like to know, and this goes back to, I believe, Ben, when you said you really, rely on your Bryant network, not just rely, but you think it's really important and super valuable and helpful. How do you use your Bryant network to help you get to where you are today? And do do you talk to or stay in touch with any of the professors that may have helped you get you where you are or have given you mentor advice or whatnot?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I've always had a really strong relationship with Bryant and the Bryant community, not only fellow alumni, graduates, but professors as well. Some are still around, many have retired. I was there on the campus last year, and Stan Muraniani was still there, economics professor, so I went over to say hello to him. Um, and But what I would say is that the nice thing about the Bryant kind of experience is that when you meet an alum, you instantly bond, right? You have the shared experiences. Well, I was in this dorm, or I went to Parentes, or I worked at Fidelity, or I had this internship. You know what I mean? There's a bond, there's an underlying commonality that you have when you're a Bryant grad. So even though they might live in Portland or live in Seattle, when we get together, we've got this kind of underlying foundation that bonds us. And then from there, we often kind of can grow that because they'll say, well, gee, I work at Microsoft. Well, gee, I work at Prudential. What kind of stuff do you do at Microsoft? And then, you know, the relationship starts to build. So the Bryant folks that I've met out here, you know, many of them are in different companies, but they all share this Bryant experience. And when I moved out here, before moving, I try to do my due diligence. You know, are there Bryant grads out here? Are there people I know? So I went on LinkedIn, I went on the Bryant Alumni Network website and tried to search for Bryant grads on the West Coast and just tried to reach out to do a little bit of due diligence, like we talked about before, you know, real estate, apartments, you know, taxes, those kinds of things. And so it's been great. It feels like home when I sit with somebody who went to Bryant. We can talk about the Red Sox, or we can talk about, you know, the Patriots, or we can talk about, you know, all the stuff that we all grew up with, and you know, I'm, you know, living in New England or growing up in New England. So I use the network often. Even to this day, I'll go onto LinkedIn and I'll do a search of Bryant grads who are either living around here or who joined the company that I work for. And it's probably the easiest and least expensive way to grow your network is just to reach out to somebody who went to the same college as you, and you can just start the relationship from there.
Absolutely. Just using that foundation and bond, like you said, is really important. And it's just naturally there. So it's not forced and you don't have to feel awkward about it. But yeah.
One story, Jessica, I just want to tell you that might be
Sorry,
helpful to alumni. I went to San Diego on business a few years ago, and I was there, and Lori was there, but I would have called up Lori. But I know that there was a Bryant, someone high up in the alumni network who lived there. So I reached out to him. I said, hey, you don't know me. You went to Bryant in the 70s. You know, I obviously didn't go to Bryant in the 70s, but I just wanted to say hello. And he instantly said, come to my house. We're going to dinner. And, you know, he had his whole thing. And he didn't know me from anyone. So me and a colleague, we were there in business. We went to his house, sure enough. And then he did really something very nice. He was from Western Mass. He had, his dad passed away and left him like a Ford Model T, some old car, like from the 20s. And he said, we're going to go to the restaurant in this car.
Cool.
Are you kidding me? And so I was just like, I mean, I thought this was just in the history books. I had never seen it and never sat in one. And so he drove us, his wife, and me and my colleague to this wonderful restaurant in San Diego. And we went in a Model T, and we drove up to the restaurant, and the concierge looked at us like we were driving an alien vehicle, because he wasn't sure how to really park it, because it didn't have a key like the modern cars. You had to do this kind of crank thing, and then it was a whole experience, but it was very generous. And he knows Robin very well, the head of the alumni office. And so I took a picture with him and sent it to her and said, look who I'm having dinner with. A grad who graduated in the 70s, who doesn't know me, and he took us out to dinner. So that's the kind of thing a Bryant grad.
So cool.
I didn't expect it, but looking back on it, that just tells you what he thinks of Bryant.
Oh, that's truly an amazing story. I can't imagine. I bet that was such an adventurous time that you had, and definitely encourage more people to use their Bryant network, because then you get to do all these adventurous things for sure. Thanks, Ben, for sharing your story. I'm going to have to go to Joe for this. So, Joe, if you'd like to tell us if you used any of your Bryant networks to help you get to where you are today, or if you know, have stayed in touch with some of your professors, let us know. Give us some tips.
Yeah, I would say definitely when I was in school, the Bryant network opened doors that otherwise wouldn't have been opened in terms of networking. Because as I was reaching out to people at different companies, you know, if they weren't a Bryant grad, usually I didn't get a response. But then I had pretty much 100% response rate if someone graduated from Bryant, and I felt like they were very helpful and wanted to make sure that other Bryant students succeed. So from that standpoint, it was a great resource. But then since I've graduated, I've gone to a number of these alumni events in Boston. You know, there's a lot of the same people I went to school with, and it was a lot of fun to see everyone. But now, you know, as it's been a few years, I've started to come across people that graduated from Bryant just in the day to day. And, you know, they may work from another firm, or they may be at a law firm, or in different capacities I might interact. And pretty much every time that happens, if we're on a call or in a meeting, we realize we're both Bryant alumni, we'll immediately set up another time to catch up and hear what we're up to, how we got to where we are, and build more of a relationship. So it's allowed me to build a kind of another level of a network in a number of different companies. And then a lot of the individuals that graduated in kind of a 5-year window between 2016 and I'd say, you know, 2010 through today, 5-year window on either side, that are in finance. We all kind of stay in touch, and you know, as we're thinking about career moves or new opportunities, we'll talk to each other and share kind of what's going on. So I think, and definitely more so than I've seen with colleagues that went to other schools, I feel like the Bryant alumni network is much stronger, and people are a lot more willing to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Literally brings me back to a really short story. I was just at the doctor's office, and the secretary who took my name and wanted to see if I'm coming back for another appointment, she graduated in the 80s, and it was her reunion year coming up, but we had to move reunion in June. So I took down her information because I wanted to tell her that she needs to come back for her reunion. So just because, you know, that type of excitement that I got from just going to the doctor's office and realizing that someone that I'm meeting just there randomly is from Bryant, who graduated from Bryant, no matter what year, you automatically feel that sense of just, you know, like comfort and just happiness, and you just want to get to know them. So I definitely want to piggyback on what Vin and Joe has said so far. So Lori, if you'd like to go next to talk about, you know, how have you used your Bryant network to help you get to where you are today? And if you know, have utilized your professors or kept in touch with your professors, please share.
Well, again, I moved out here way before a network ever started, so and my career was pretty much established. But how I got back involved with Bryant is really an interesting story. It has to do with sports and travel. Now, the Bryant basketball team was coming to San Diego, and they were playing San Diego State, who at the time was really, really good, and you couldn't get tickets. And my husband wanted to go see him, and I got an email saying, "Oh, Bryant's coming. We're having an alumni event." Now, I haven't been in touch with Bryant in 25 years, and I was like, "Wow, I don't know, should we go?" So we went, and it was really fun. There was like 10 of us, and there was, you know, 7,000 San Diego State fans, and there's 10 of us, and I just bonded with these people. I met the alumni group, and then they were talking about the travel program, and they were going to Italy the next year, and I'm like, oh, that'd be interesting. My husband and I travel a lot, so we didn't know anyone, and we went and we traveled, and we had the best time, and we got really involved with the alumni and the travel program. And I met amazing people from all over, and our common bond is Bryant. And now they're like our really good friends, and we travel together now. So we've gone on 2 cruises. We've gone to Norway. Last year we did the Baltic one. And Robin goes too, and Robin and I are like really good friends now. And it's just fantastic. I love these people. And I didn't go to school with any of them. They're all different ages. And we have professors that go to, retired professors. And and one of them was my teacher, Dr. Bingham. I love him dearly. And it's fantastic. I love it. And that's how I go back into it. And now I'm a mentor. So people that do come to San Diego, Robin asked me to meet with them. I meet with different people who want to move to San Diego, and I talk to them about different things about it and help anyone any way I can. I've taught classes. I've been a guest speaker at campus, and I sit on NAC, and I love it. It's great. So it's a different experience, but now I'm using my experience to help the others.
I mean, I think that's great. I mean, you were able to come back and still enjoy that Bryant bond that, wasn't there for 25 years, and automatically you felt that. And then to come back and then to become so much more, and to give back so much more. And that's just amazing. So I bet you're on our alumni fire, which everyone should be on, our mentoring and networking program. But thank you, Lori, for sharing that amazing story. Now, is Lindy, we saved the best for last. Can you please tell us what your Bryant Network, how you have your Bryant Network, or have you used your Bryant Network to help you get to where you are today? And if you stay in touch with any Bryant professors.
Sure. So when I was applying to law school, I remember going to an event that Roger Williams was hosting. And when I arrived there, I had one of the first people that I saw was a Bryant alum. And I was like, oh my God, what are you doing here? And he's like, I go to Roger Williams. And he's like, oh, let's go talk to Stella. So we just went, and there was like a good 3 Bryant alums there at Roger Williams at the time when I was applying and deciding whether or not I wanted to go there. So seeing those familiar faces, knowing that they came from Bryant, definitely was beyond helpful, because then I was able to talk to them and get, the nitty gritty, ask them all the questions, and also have them as a resource while I was in law school. Even though they had graduated before I had matriculated there, they continued to reach back and say, hey, do you need my outlines? Do you need my notes? Do you need my case files for this and that course? And they held it down during the years that I was in law school. Also, I myself, while I was there were certain Bryant students who came to Roger Williams for law school, and I was like, oh my goodness, what are you doing here? One of them she actually had transferred out of Bryant during her time there, but when she ran into me at the law school, we immediately clicked. I helped her get internships. I had her put me down as reference for different opportunities legally and things of that nature. So we've really, the Bryant community definitely has each other's back. We really hold each other down in terms of opportunities of advancement. And certainly when it comes to like the social aspect, Vin, I love that story that you told about the alum who took you out to dinner and went all out for you guys. Recently, I actually went to a wedding at the beginning of 2020 in January, before COVID really smacked us in the face. I rang 2020 in Jamaica for a wedding of 2 Bryant alums. Okay, one of them was my year. She had come in after the year after. I actually gave her and her parents a tour of Bryant when she came in, and they tied the knot and had this phenomenal wedding in Jamaica. And it wasn't even like they got married on a resort. It wasn't like a destination wedding. They were 2 international students from Jamaica. So they had this gorgeous, authentic wedding experience that was phenomenal. And it was like a little mini reunion, right? Because other people flew in for it. We had students who flew in from Nigeria to attend. Like, it was amazing. There was another Bryant couple that also got married this year in Ghana. So it almost feels like, as Lori mentioned, we're like traveling the world together for each other's life events, or just in general, keeping in touch and really holding each other down. There was this one time I actually got stranded in Miami. On my way back from Colombia. I was going to Haiti for one conference after leaving another conference, and I missed a flight, which means that I was stranded in Miami. And I immediately called one of my friends who lived in Miami. I was like, hey, I missed the flight. It looks like I'm going to be here overnight. And he was like, oh my God, you know what? I'm going to come and pick you up right now. Took me shopping because I had no luggage, took me to happy hour, literally took absolute great care of me that night and set me out on my way the next morning, and that is what Bryant will do for you. You're going to make friends from across the globe, across the pond, and no matter how much time goes by, you know that you can reach out to them and they're going to have your back. And the same thing goes for the professors. My favorite professors when I was at Bryant were Judy McDonald and Sandra Enos. Those were my babies, okay? Like, I loved these women. When I was applying to law school, they are the ones who gave me my letters of recommendation. And moving forward, I'm still friends with Judy on Facebook. Sandra Enos and I were chatting the other day via LinkedIn message. I know that she recently retired and started a completely different business. Like, love them. Professor Ramesh Mohan, he did sophomore international experience with us. I still call him Uncle Ramesh in my mind, okay? That's how awesome he was during that trip. I mean, Bryant just has some distinguished faculty and great alumni, and just that the size of the school really does matter, and it does help with that, because no matter what, when you go forward, when you meet people, they're gonna, if they know you went to Bryant, they're gonna have your back. Even in Haiti, I remember I went to Haiti one year, and we actually hosted an event for Bryant alumni as well as prospective Bryant students, and Haiti's leading business people who are really developing the country and driving change went to Bryant, right? And they had amazing stories of their experience as international students in the US, particularly at Bryant, and how they were able to take those skills and bring it back to an underdeveloped country and allow it to progress as far as it's come today. So I'm definitely proud to be a Bryant alum. I'm always happy to help current Bryant students and my fellow Bryant alums. And it's a great place to be, once again, like 5 stars all across the board. Highly recommend.
See, we knew we saved the best for last. That story was amazing. I felt that energy. I felt that Bryant network love. I felt that community and the family aspect of Bryant. You know, being a proud alum is why we're here and why we're doing this, and you know, wanting to share perspective and experience and how valuable, just reinforcing how valuable our Bryant network is, no matter where you are. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us, all of you. So thank you. Now that is our last question. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you so much for taking your time out today to share your experience with us all. Your experience and advice are very valuable, and I believe our newest alumni will appreciate them very much. And you know, this concludes our panel discussion. So thank you.